During my introduction, I said that the sign plus does not always mean addition, and the sign minus does not always mean subtraction. What extra meanings, therefore, do they have? That is, what are other meanings of plus and minus? Whenever you see plus or minus in a number operation, what meanings could you give them to enable you offer the correct answer after interpretation? That takes us to lesson objective number 8, meanings of the signs plus and minus. Please join me as I develop this section. Again, it is meanings of plus and minus. Please listen. In this section 8, let us have our attention focused on the meanings of plus and minus. Many times, we see this sign or this sign or both of them in number operations. They are the most popular of odd number operational signs. When we see them, what do we take them to be? Perhaps before now, you were told that this is a sign of addition and this is a sign of subtraction. Anyway, that is not entirely wrong. In fact, that meaning is applicable. But what you may not have known before now is that this sign doesn't have one meaning, and this sign also doesn't have one meaning. In fact, when the signs plus and minus occur in number operations, they do not always mean the same thing. Why is this important to note this? It's important because some persons get the wrong answers to number operations because of wrong meanings attached to symbols of number operations. Once we get the symbols wrong, then the answer could be wrong too. Let us take our time to look at the 4 basic meanings of this plus. And afterwards, we talk about the 4 basic meanings of its opposite, which is this minus. Again, stop thinking that this always means addition. It is just one out of 4 different meanings it has. The 4 meanings of plus are 1. Having, 2. Positive, 3. Addition, which could also be called combination, then 4. More than 0. This and this are the most dominant meaning of this sign. In fact, when this sign plus means addition, we hardly show it. That tells you that from the beginning, when you formed an idea that whenever I see this sign that it means addition, you could have been so confused with many operations whose answers you could not get because each time you saw it, you gave it a meaning, addition. By means of this section and others that depend on it, you will see different meanings of this sign and how each meaning contributes to offering answers to number operations. Therefore, these 4 are the meanings of that sign. What do I mean by more than 0? Don't forget that 0 means not having, not owing. So once number is above 0, we indicate it with plus. When number is below 0, we shall see how it is done. In the field of vectors, this 4th meaning is very important. In the field of accounting, the first 3 are very important. In fact, this 3rd one serves both sections of vectors and accounting. But at all times, we must bear it in mind that we don't always show this addition in the process. What about this sign, minus? The meanings of minus are the opposite of meanings of plus. What are they? Let's see. Now we have them. The meanings of minus are 1. Owing, 2. Negative, 3, subtraction, and 4, less than 0. As I said earlier, notice that each meaning of minus is a stark opposite of the meaning of its counterpart, which is plus. While plus meant having, this minus has come to mean owing. While plus meant positive, this minus has come to mean negative. While plus meant addition, especially addition of assets, this minus has come to mean subtraction, that is addition of liabilities. Then, while plus meant more than 0, this minus has come to mean less than 0. It is believed that each of these 4 meanings of these signs is understood, especially in connection with basic number operations. You may ask, since this plus means 4 things, and this minus also means 4 things, how do we know which meaning it has, whatever we say it? Let's find out how to know which meaning to attach to the signs each time we see them. Watch. Now, this is how to recognize the meanings of plus and minus. Recognize the meanings of plus and minus by their positions and interactions in number operations. That is, by the places they are found and by the way they relate with other signs and terms. We can tell what they are doing in such number operations. Number 1, when placed just before a term, plus means having, while minus means owing. That is, if you place this sign just before a term is either one number or a group of numbers put together to become one number, or which we regard as one number. Sometimes one number can be called a number. Sometimes a group of numbers put together can be called one number. Look at this 3y for instance. 3y, y stands for a number, and 3 is what is counting that number. So 3y is actually a group of numbers, but we look at them as one number. Because of this is not just called a number, it is called a term. This 4 is a single number, and we still refer to it as a term. So, in other words, when operations are being carried out, they are done with terms. Those numbers we see are not always single numbers. Sometimes they're a group of numbers put together and which we regard as one. In any case, whether a single number or group of numbers that we see as one, it is called a term. Therefore, terms are what take part in number operations, not just ordinary numbers. Now we proceed. Let's look at examples here. Don't forget what I said earlier, that if this sign is placed just before a number, which means nothing separates this sign with a number, not even a bracket separates this sign from a number or a term, then this sign means having for that number. And the same thing applicable to this sign. If this sign is written just before a term without anything separating them, then it means owing. See examples here. Number A plus 4. You can see that nothing separates this 4 and this plus. If something separates them, a different meaning would come up. But here, plus 4 is an expression that has nothing separating the plus from the 4. Therefore, plus 4 means having 4. What about minus 4? Nothing separates this minus from this 4. Because of that, this minus means owing 4. If something had come to separate them, then a new meaning would have been applicable. Let's make progress. What about this one? Plus 3y. Nothing separates this plus from 3y. Not even a bracket does that. If it had done that, a different meaning would have been obtained from it. But because nothing separates this 3y from plus, the plus is simply telling the 3y that it is what you have. Therefore, plus 3y means having 3y. Then ultimately, we have minus 3y. The minus here precedes 3y. 3y is a term, and minus precedes it to indicate that 3y is what somebody owes. Therefore, minus 3y means owing 3y, and so on and so forth. Don't forget it. Whenever plus or minus is placed just before a term without anything separating them, what happens? That plus stands for having, and that minus stands for owing. Which other places can we find these signs and for us to assign different meanings to them? After all, this having and owing, these having and owing are the just one out of the sets of meanings we attached to plus and minus in the previous times. Let us see other meanings we can get. Another meaning of this plus and minus goes this way. It says when placed just before another sign or a bracket, plus means positive, while minus means negative. Don't forget that we said at the outset that the most prominent or the popular meanings of these signs, plus and minus, are having, owing, then positive and negative. That is, plus means having and positive, while minus means owing and negative. The two other meanings that we have attached to them are secondary in importance. They don't occur all the time. It means, therefore, that the first two meanings attached to these signs are the most prominent and the most popular. And that is why we're going to restrict the meanings in number operations as possessed by these signs to only two for each of them. Right now, let us see how to know that plus is positive. We say when plus is placed before another sign or before a bracket, then it must be positive. But when minus is placed just before another sign or a bracket, it is negative. Let's see examples here. Look at the first one, plus bracket plus 7. What is this 7 doing? What is this plus doing here? And what is this plus doing here? That is a time for you to reevaluate that former meaning you had been holding as the meaning of plus. Before now, perhaps you had been thinking that whatever you say plus, it means addition. In fact, none of these two signs means addition. Most of the time, we carry out addition, which is combination, in our minds. But here, what plus means here is not what it means here. What does it mean here? It means having, and what it means here is positive. This plus is placed just before a bracket. Therefore, nothing separates it from the bracket. If something else had come between this plus and this bracket, the plus wouldn't have had any authority to tell what the bracket would be like or to direct its activity or its actions. What about this one, please? This is minus bracket 3. Recall that if a number is written without a sign, then the sign unwritten before it is plus. So this thing you're seeing here means the same thing as minus bracket plus 3. What is that plus inside doing? It means having 3. This minus kept just before a bracket. If we say just before, it means that nothing separates them. And here we observe that nothing is separating this minus from this bracket. Because of that, this minus is actually standing for negative. Negative of whatever is happening in this bracket. Therefore, this minus is a commander. It is affecting or directing how this number in the bracket will turn out to be after a particular operation. Number 6 says minus bracket minus 8. If you have been thinking that wherever you see minus, that it stands for subtraction, then it will shock you to know that none of these two is subtraction. One means owing, and the other means negative. This is owing, this is negative. When placed just before a number, it is, when minus is placed just before a number, it means owing. When placed just before a bracket, it means negative. So here is negative, and here is owing. Apart from placing these signs before brackets, we also place signs before signs. Example, sometimes we have operations that feature plus and next minus without anything separating them. What it means is that this plus and this minus occurring together will eventually mean something afterwards. But whatever it is, this plus is actually commanding this minus to continue being what it is. So despite the fact that we don't have a bracket before this, between this plus and this plus is positive, and this minus could be owing. Likewise here, this minus is negative, and this plus is owing, is having. Then in this number f, this is minus of multiplication. That is negative of whatever answer you get after multiplication, and so on and so forth, having such like operations. So don't forget that so far we have considered two major ways of knowing what the meaning of plus and minus is whenever they occur in number operations. I hope what I said so far was clear to you. I want to conclude by reminding you that it is not all the time that we see plus and minus before a number or a number operation. When a number appears and there is no sign that precedes it or comes before it, certainly take it as plus. Watch out for a test. At this point, we want to find out if we have known what the meanings of plus and minus are. Use the following thing, or use the following number operation to test your knowledge and understanding of the meanings of plus and minus. The checkpoint says, determine where plus means having or positive, and where minus means owing or negative in the following number operation. Number operation is minus 7 plus bracket minus 2 minus 9 plus 2 plus bracket minus 10. What is instruction? Please, you are seeing minus, plus, minus, minus, plus, plus, minus. In each of them, that is something it is doing. That is, what is this minus doing here? What role is it playing? This plus, what is it doing here? This minus, what is its role or its meaning? This minus, what is its role or its meaning? The same thing applicable to this plus, and this minus. Tell what each sign, each of those signs is doing. That is the instruction. Sometimes something can come between a plus or minus and a bracket, and we still call that plus positive and that minus negative. How and when is it possible that something comes between a plus and a bracket and we still call the plus positive? And when is it that something can come between minus and a bracket and we still refer to the minus as negative? Please see an example. It says, that is number 3, when placed just before a coefficient of a bracket, plus is equal to positive while minus is equal to negative. What is the meaning of this word coefficient? It means a counter, a multiplier, a number that tells how many times another number is brought out. If I write, for instance, 3y it thinks the 3 is counting how many y's we're going to bring out. So because 3 is counting, 3 is called coefficient. This section is not going to be used to explain coefficient, but for our purpose, what I've said so far suffices. Now, look at these examples here. This first one says plus 2 bracket plus 5 in bracket. Earlier, we saw this plus placed just before this bracket to mean positive. What about now? Does it still mean positive? The answer is yes. It still means positive because this plus is placed just before a coefficient. This bracket is a number, and this 2 tells us how many times that number will be repeated. If this is 5, this 2 tells us how many times we're going to bring 5. Therefore, 2 is counting how many 5s. Because of that, because 5 is in the bracket and 2 is outside, we call this 2 the coefficient of this plus 5. And now, plus is kept just before this coefficient. As a result, this plus is still positive. The same line of reasoning is applicable in this second example here. We have minus 4 bracket plus 5. This minus is still negative, despite the fact that something comes between it and the bracket. Now, we have many more examples like these two that will help us know that minus could still mean negative and plus could still mean positive, though something separates them from the brackets. If, for instance, another minus comes here or plus comes here, what it means is that these 2 no longer is serving as a coefficient of this bracket plus 5. We now regard them as pure addition of plus 2 and this plus 5. Again, if another sign like plus or minus or times comes between this minus 4 and this bracket, then this meaning we just attach to it no longer holds. It is believed that everything I said here is clear to you.